Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu wa-salam ala Rasulihil Kareem. The psychology of fasting. Topic 1 is the psychological benefits of fasting. And in that area, we'll look at not just did you fast or you didn't. Often we discuss it as a kind of binary thing. I did my fast. We know that prayers can be better or worse. You can be more focused, less focused, right? But usually we just think if I did the fast or I didn't do the fast. So we'll look at how the quality of our fast and what that even means can increase the benefits we get from it. Second topic is to learn more about why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed fasting Ramadan. And this part I wrote for my own self. I need to implement all the things we'll talk about today more than anyone. And so I'm writing this to myself, and hopefully it will benefit anyone else. But why even we should be, why Allah, He gave us these ibadah for a reason. So why is it important for us to fast Ramadan? Okay. In 1972, at Stanford University, they did a research project. They took 32 children between the ages of 3.5 and 5.5. So average age was 4 years old. They brought each one into a room individually, and they put a marshmallow on the table in front of them. They said, I'm going to leave the room. If you can wait here 15 minutes without eating the marshmallow, when I come back, I'll give you a second one. You get 2 marshmallows. You can eat them both then. If you eat them within the 15 minutes, you don't get any other marshmallow. Now, this is what's called a study of delayed gratification. They were looking at what type of mechanisms the children would utilize to help them get through that test. Delayed gratification, the definition is to forego immediate gratification for the sake of later consequences. That's the definition. So not only did they do this experiment, they followed those children for the next 30 years. They knew which of the children were able to complete the test, and they also wrote down how they were able to. What techniques did they use to make it through? Imagine you're 4 years old, 15 minutes with a marshmallow is a real fitna. How they, not only who passed it, but how they did it. And which ones didn't? Which ones just ate it and said, I can't wait 15 minutes, no way. They followed them for 30 years, and this is what they found out. Those who could wait the 15 minutes, over their lifetime, they had greater self-control. They were more successful in their life. They had better grades in school. They were able to cope with frustration and stress better. They had higher self-esteem, and even they had better physical health. All of these things were correlated with which group you were in. The ones who passed the marshmallow test or the ones who didn't. So why is the ability to delay gratification such a powerful skill that it will impact the whole rest of your life, as this experiment showed? So first of all, delaying gratification is a type of patience. A lot of times in my clinical practice, I talk about patience. And people often associate patience with just waiting around or just doing nothing. That's being patient. But actually, the psychological benefit of patience is much more profound. It's whenever you have control over your actions as opposed to your impulses controlling them. So whenever you want to do something, but you shouldn't, you hold yourself back. Or you should do something, but you don't really want to, and you push yourself to do it. So in English, you might call the first one self-restraint. You might call the other one like endurance. These are all forms of sabr. So bravery is patience with your fear. You're afraid, but you do something that you should do to help someone. You're brave. Self-restraint is patience with your desires, right? You hold yourself back from some negative desire. Trust in Allah, tawakkul, is patience with your anxiety and your sadnesses. You have these feelings, which is not in itself bad, but if they were to control your life, right, you say, okay, I have these anxieties, I have these sadnesses, but I will trust in Allah. So whenever I am acting as opposed to what my impulses are telling me, this is kind of patience. Qiyam al-layl, if you pray in the night, this is patience with your laziness. So patience has a lot of implementations, and delayed gratification is one of those forms. Okay, so what does the marshmallow test teach us about fasting? Voluntarily abstaining from food and drink builds your ability to restrain yourself from acting on your impulses in general. That's what we learned from the marshmallow test, right? They weren't just able to not eat sweets. They were able to do a lot of things. They were able to deal with stress better in their life. Why did they have better grades? Because who likes to study? Not everyone's a big fan of studying, right? But when it came time to study and their mind was saying, go watch TV, they were more likely to push forward and study, right? Better physical health. Exercise and fitness is not an easy task. But the people who were able to resist the marshmallow test were better able to keep on their exercise regimen. It permeated all the aspects of their life. That's the key point. So the ability to just resist food and drink builds a cognitive ability to resist impulses in general, because your hunger and your thirst is a very strong impulse, right? So if you have built that ability, you might also be able to restrain yourself from yelling when you're angry. You will have the more control you have over yourself instead of your impulses, the less control over you Shaitan will have. So this is kind of why Rasulullah ﷺ told people who aren't married, he said, to fast. When I first heard that, I said, what's one got to do with the other, right? How is fasting going to help you're not married, right? What he meant was, if you fast, you will build self-restraint, and you need self-restraint if you're not married, right? So all the ibadah are a training mechanism that Allah is using to convert us from what we are to what He hopes we will become. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum used not only the best teacher, but they were the best in ibadah to become who they were, random people in the desert, to the greatest civilization ever to exist. Okay, so let me ask a question. When is the most patience required during the fast? Who has any idea? During your fast, at what point is the most patience required?
When you're breaking the fast.
Alhamdulillah, on the first try. Exactly, when you are breaking the fast. Why is that? Because your hunger is at its peak, but also because you're letting your guard down, right? It's one thing to block it out all day, stay busy, but now you're in front of the food. Excuse me. I remember I was at a buffet once because it was a celebration. It was during Ramadan with 2 other Muslims for some issue we were celebrating. And one of the guys, he just went crazy on the first plate. And the rest of the meal, he said, I'm stuffed, what was wrong with me? I can't enjoy the rest of the meal, you know? That's an extreme example, but why is the sunnah to eat a little amount of food, then do the maghrib, and then have dinner? Because that's not what is culturally done in a lot of places. Some places they have a giant iftar that lasts until the end of maghrib. Some places they don't even have an iftar. They just go, rush, quickly do maghrib, and then they have their dinner. But the sunnah is, why is that? Well, there's a practical reason, right? You shouldn't be thinking about food in the maghrib. And also, you shouldn't be postponing eating. You shouldn't be overeating either. But there's a cognitive reason that we don't think about. And that is that the most improvement in your patience will happen if you restrain yourself, not completely obviously, but you restrain your big desire when breaking the fast. So this is an extension of the concept of the reason I'm holding myself back from eating and drinking is not just to do that, right? But I'm purposefully making myself feel hungry and then not obeying that impulse. So I build the skill of not obeying impulses. And that gets even harder at the time we're opening the fast. A way to think about this is Muhammad Ali is famous for saying, they asked him, how many sit-ups do you do? He said, I don't know, because I don't start counting until it hurts. And what that means is, you do, and anytime you work out, whichever that exercise is, The first 80% of the workout is just to get you physiologically active. And all the benefits come in the last 10, 20, 15% like this. A lot of people, they work out some, and then when it gets hard, they say, okay, that's enough. But really, they didn't work out at all. Like, they got themselves into a metabolic state where they were about to benefit, and they stopped. But in that last part is really where the physiological change happens in your body. The first 80% of the workout is just to get you there. So the fast is very similar. You fast the whole day to get yourself really ready to eat so that you can break your fast in a calm way and then improve a lot, just like when you're working out. You know, some people go to the gym and they don't get much benefit, right? And there are some people, they know everything about fitness and they come every week with new gains. So how can we use this information to improve the benefits of fasting? That's the real takeaway, right? This is all just in the background information. So kind of like I was just saying, think of your fasting, and really in my personal belief, think of all ibadah as exercise. Cognitive exercise is to train our iman. I mean, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum didn't magically become so amazing. Obviously they had the greatest teacher, but there were probably people in that city who didn't become so amazing. Right? We know of the ones who became amazing, who one of them, you could throw them into China and he's better than an entire army. They did that because they went through, you know, it's like if I worked out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm probably going to get results. So if you're doing your ibadah with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're getting a whole different form of workout. Purposefully pushing yourself to improve your iman. Just like if you go to the gym and you just walk for 5 miles an hour on the treadmill for an hour, and you say, yeah, I did it, okay, great. And you go every day for years, and you say, it's okay, I don't really get that much benefit. Sure, walking is on 5 miles an hour is better than nothing. It's not, you know, just like fasting is better than not fasting. But that's not the most efficient workout, right? They have all these schemes, you know, you do certain intervals, and you do weights, and you do all this stuff, right? If you get a really good workout, you can transform your whole body in 4 months. If you get the most of your ibadah, your iman can maybe shoot through the roof, perhaps. But it's also possible to be working out for years and really not make improvement, right? So the key is, it sounds counterintuitive, focusing on experiencing the unpleasant sensations you're going through during the fast, right? When you work out, you are literally, we could say, harming your body, or not harming your body, you are distressing yourself. You're lifting weights you can't lift. That's the point. If you only lift what you can already lift, you're only going to maintain your current physical fitness. You have to push yourself to the point where you can no longer pick this bar up. And in that last rep is when your body changes. So purposefully experiencing hunger and thirst and finding a way to remain constant is when you will really improve your mind and indirectly increase your iman. That's in opposition to avoiding the unpleasantness. That's kind of like the one who goes to the gym and he only just does a very simple workout and leaves. He doesn't want to sweat. He doesn't want to feel distressed. Avoiding would be something like, and we're all guilty. I'm guilty of this as well. Sleeping, right? Things like this. It's not that I'm saying, oh, you shouldn't want to sleep. But it's just this idea of experiencing the distress of being hunger and thirsty, and finding a way through it is different from, you know, even if it involves distracting yourself, that's totally fine. There are many techniques. There's distracting yourself. There is forms of ibadah that help you maintain your focus. But avoiding it is the point. If you remember that the point of the fast is to go through that experience and succeed through it. If I avoid the experience, this is perhaps why we know that Rasulullah said, there will be some people who will fast and they will gain nothing but hunger and thirst. What he means is, did you really benefit from it? So the question is, we never ask, well, how do you benefit from it or not? So it's my belief that at least partially, I can't say this is the whole thing, but a big part of it is what you gain from the experience. So just a few examples. Distracting yourself is a good way. It's something we teach actually when people have to deal with stressful situations, Distracting yourself is because this is the same, any technique that you could use when you have to deal with another impulse later, because that's the point. The point is this is a training exercise. I want to learn how to be hungry and thirsty voluntarily and just go on with my day so that hopefully I can be angry and not act on that impulse. I can be depressed and maybe not act on that impulse. I can be lazy and tired and still wake up for my salah. Those are the results of training myself. So distracting yourself through unpleasant sensations is a perfectly legitimate way that you could do that later on. So for example, if you were angry, it would be a good technique to just stay quiet, because after a while you'll probably calm down. You could come back to the person who you were talking about later, and you could go watch some television maybe, or anything like this. The point is you wouldn't have had an outburst to the person. Then you would come back later. Another thing is just to allow the sensations to reduce on their own. This is a very common thing that it's difficult for people to remember. All the emotions we feel, they're temporary. Even though you're feeling hungry right now, you usually don't feel like at this top level hunger all day long in the fast. There'll be times when you're feeling more hungry. But if you actually just get through it, it kind of reduces on its own, right? That's a good technique to practice, because that's the same thing will happen with all the other negative impulses that you will have. So these are just things to keep in mind. Like you would say, well, how can I get better at fasting? You're telling me not to avoid it. Then I should just suffer. Not that you should suffer, but your mind will instinctively find ways to help you through those impulses. And doing that will really make the benefit. You want to come out of Ramadan on Shawwal 1st, more patient, more compassionate, more relaxed. So it's kind of like if I said I was going to the gym for 30 days, I came back and you said, you look the same. What were you doing in there, right? But if I come back and I can run faster, I can jump higher, you say you really benefited from it. Okay, that's the end of part one. Part one is what are the benefits of fasting? And in summary, is to train yourself to not act on impulses. But here's the, how can we use that in addition? But then how can we use this to understand better why did Allah prescribe fasting in Ramadan? Okay? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So, O you have believed, decreed upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may develop taqwa. So a lot of times you ask someone who just random person, why do you fast? They will say, oh, maybe to be more grateful for the things you have or something like that. Which are good reasons, but that's not actually the reason Allah has told us. He told us it's to build taqwa, to build your fear of Allah or your mindfulness of the accountability you will have. So it's kind of a funny thing to say, how does not eating build taqwa? I used to ask myself this. Someone told me this verse like 20 years ago. There was a Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran. And I told this person who knew Islam better than me, the purpose of fasting is to build self-restraint. He said, where did you get that? I said, it's in the Quran. And he said, he knew better than me. He didn't want to be arrogant. He said, show it to me. So I showed him this verse in English. I didn't know any word of Arabic this time. And he said, that's not what it says. I said, what does it say? He says it's to build taqwa. I said, what is taqwa? And so he told me it's fearing God. I said, well, why did the translator write self-restraint? He said, I don't know. I've been thinking about this question for 20 years. I had to become a psychologist to figure it out. Inshallah, I don't know if I can say I figured it out, but. So if we roll it back, the purpose of fasting, one of the purposes of fasting, is to build delayed gratification, right? Jannah is the ultimate delayed gratification. We need to sacrifice now in anticipation of future reward. But that's difficult. And oftentimes, all of us, we eat the marshmallow. We do the thing we shouldn't do right now, or we don't do the thing we should do right now, because it's hard to do everything correct in waiting for a long time of something you don't, for us, maybe 80 years seems a long time, even though it's not. But to a 4-year-old, 15 minutes seemed like a long time. And especially when you have shaitan constantly whispering in your ear, eat the marshmallow, eat the marshmallow. Essentially, that's what he's doing our whole life. He's trying to convince us not to delay our gratification. So in addition to building patience for our general life events, which fasting does, it also helps us have patience for the suffering through this life to do good deeds without receiving the rewards till later. So fasting is experiencing hunger and thirst and voluntarily abstaining from acting on those desires, even though you have the capacity to. And taqwa is having the desire to sin and voluntarily abstaining because you have a fear of your accountability to Allah. So taqwa isn't just something you have, we need to build it. And Allah is telling us you can build it through fasting. But the connecting of the dots, how not eating gets you taqwa. Not eating builds your ability to be patient with your impulses and delay your gratification. And that skill is essentially another definition of taqwa. Delaying your current gratification for your whole life for something other people may be telling you doesn't even exist. But you believe it exists, and you're going to abstain from things that you should because you're waiting for a reward. You're going to do things you don't always want to because you're waiting for a reward later on. That's a skill that's difficult. It's not so easy. And the key is it's important to fast in a way that will actually build that patience. We want to try, and I'm guilty of this as well, trying to avoid the experience of fasting, but just getting through it somehow. It will still complete the obligation, but may not build as much taqwa. Like if your parents were making you go to the gym and you just did the minimum requirement because you were required to go there. So in summation, we want to try and not just fast so that we gain hunger and thirst, but think of it as like an opportunity to develop patience and eventually develop taqwa by actually experiencing the unpleasant sensations of fasting, but trying to build techniques to deal with that, a variety of ways. But the more that I experience difficult things, just like the more I pick up some really heavy bar, my mind will come up with a lot of ways. Everyone will find different ways of building that ability. And then inshallah, that ability can translate to a lot of other areas of our life. And that's why he's requiring us, inshallah, to do it at least a month every year, and then as many voluntarily times as we can. I think that's all. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajmeen.